Hello, wonderful viewers. Welcome back to SmartPod's podcast. I'm your host, Mansa, and today we got someone special in our virtual studio, Matthew Rinkert, the lead customer success manager at DocuSign. Matthew, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, before we jump into the tech talk, let's get to know you a bit better, Matthew. You have been in sales and business development for over 15 years, right? Can you share a bit more about your journey and how you landed in this exciting enterprise SaaS world?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a brief background of me. I started my career journey in San Francisco Bay Area. Everyone knows it as kind of the tech hub of the world, and was in data privacy where I kind of first cut my teeth with technology meets legal. And from there, made a series of stops at SaaS companies that really modernized like that cornerstone, something that needed to be uh, brought from a manual process to really digitization. And so that led me to CLM some years ago, which I'm still at within DocuSign. Really exciting space at kind of the intersectionality of legal operations meets the various business units and stakeholders. And I was in sales, as you mentioned, for many years, and that parlayed itself into customer success management in the enterprise space. So really exciting, wide range of clients, wide range of problems to solve with software.
Quite a right, Matthew. Appreciate you sharing that with us. Now let's dig into something that's buzzing in AI space. Let's start by exploring the nuances of generative AI, I must say. From where you stand, what's your current vibe and hype around generative AI? And where do you think we are, in this ever evolving cycle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll probably ask your thoughts about it as well. I think in the hype cycle, we've seen it time and time again. I think in the 90s, it was the internet, both for consumers and what it could mean for enterprise. And then you had the early dot coms, like everyone just wanted to slap a dot com cycle. And you saw a lot of them kind of come and go. And then even just a few years ago, if you remember, sort of the crypto NFT space, people couldn't get enough of it. And then, oh, lo and behold, fall of 2022, we had Gen AI, and people started talking about Gen AI, the capabilities. Let's forget about, the AI that we've had for decades, spanning back to the 50s. So I would say in terms of hype cycle, I think we're probably peak hype, but I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. Because I think, unlike, and this is my opinion, I think crypto blockchain does have a lot of application, but I would argue that Gen AI and AI in general has more of a holistic application, not only to consumers, but enterprise. I think there's a limitless amount of problems you can solve with AI. So although we're at peak, I don't see it coming down anytime soon.
Well, interesting insights. It's clear that there's a lot happening in this space, but now let's zoom in a bit more. When it comes to actually implementing generative AI, what are the main challenges these organizations face during the use case selection and implementation process?
No, that's a great question. I think with AI, whether it's Gen AI or other, is really understanding the use case. I think a lot of times when you have a technology that's largely hyped, like blockchain, we'll just go back to that for a minute. Blockchain largely took a lot of energy, requires a lot of cooperation from the said individuals, and then, how trustworthy is that blockchain historically? I think same thing with Gen AI in terms of use case. I'm in the legal ops space or CLM space. I think it was a low hanging fruit. You have a contract, it needs to be sent out internally, externally to the various stakeholders. Key insights need to be gleaned from it. So low hanging fruit, you have a copious amount of text there that the Gen AI can grab, and then also can see historical back and forth in negotiation or in the contract cycle. Whereas I'll just give you a consumer application. I'm a big avid listener of Spotify, and they incorporated about a year ago this DJ X and its Gen AI, where yes, there's some utility. Supposedly he's curating an on the fly list, but it doesn't seem that different from the playlist they had before, except with the AI DJ. So I think you have to pick your use cases wisely. And I think the key thing is, what are you trying to solve for? In terms of contracts, it would be a more expeditious kind of turn back and forth. And also, can you glean more insight? You can either make more money for your company, or if you're on the buy side, decrease your spend. So I would say, start with your why, and then how are you going to execute that in terms of AI?
Really, I see real world challenges make this journey more intriguing. Let's bringing it closer to home for some industries like the legal sector. What trends and observations have you noticed regarding the adoption of generative AI, especially in the context of contract management?
Yeah, I would say, a lot of, historically with contracts, if you're familiar with it, is, whether it's a business stakeholder or the legal team, they're going to pour over the document, they're going to redline it. If it's their paper, then you have more of a negotiation. But if it's third party, historically, you're going to look for how every T is crossed, every I is dotted, and how can this contract benefit you or be mutually beneficial? Make sure that your organization is not, I would say there's no damage at stake, or conversely. So I think in terms of how legal ops is going, it very slowly, I would say, even though that CLM has been around for the better part of, you know, a decade or half a decade, as some would argue. I think it's a little slower to adopt because one, legal teams need to make sure that the data that they're getting is accurate, it's safeguarded. For instance, let's say that use AI for a first pass at a contract. It can give you a first pass or summarization within mere seconds, but is that accurate depending on what the lawyer is used to, their tribal knowledge about their business, maybe tribal knowledge about the vertical? So I'm curious to see where it goes. I look at it as just, it enables the legal and business stakeholders team, but at this current juncture, I don't think it's the end all say all. It's just like anything, it can provide you a suggestion based on where you've been and where your business is going. But I think it's been a little slower to adopt. But I think in the coming years, we'll see much more full adoption, not only from the business stakeholders, but from the legal team as well. And I think by that time, we'll have more surety of where the data is coming from, and then the reassurance from the end user as well.
Must have fascinating insights. Now let's navigate through something critical in the legal landscape. Speaking of the legal industry, Matthew, compliance is a big deal. Right? How do you see AI technologies, including generative AI, assisting in maintaining this compliance and ensuring contracts adhere to this every legal standard?
Yeah, this is a tough question, and probably that you need a lot of people to weigh in and get their opinion. I would say in this one, you kind of look at ChatGPT is sort of I would say, the formal benchmark for Gen AI today. Everyone looks at it from a consumer and enterprise perspective. So when I do a prompt, let me just give you an example. Maybe if I was a customer success manager and I was new to the field and I didn't know how to construct or conduct a meeting. So maybe I prompt it, how should I do a meeting? And then it generates something back. I guess my concern or question would be, in terms of compliance, where is the data coming from? Even with ChatGPT, I think they have a disclaimer on some editions of it that is the data is not past 2021. So even that, you have to question the validity of the data and where the data is coming from. I think you have to be careful about copyright infringement. And so kind of pivoting back to legal is if you're using Gen AI, historically that tribal knowledge would come from all within the organization, whether it was the general counsel, the paralegal, or maybe any of the counsel on the legal team. And so I think with Gen AI, is it going to external sources? Is it looking at what's been previously negotiated at other companies? Maybe it's scrolling the web, maybe it's scrolling some databases. And so I think from a compliance perspective, you really have to understand like where is it getting that data from? And then furthermore, in the context of data privacy, is it adhering to privacy regulations, not only globally like GDPR, but even domestically? California has pretty rigid ones. So I think that's something that we're going to have to continue to really lean into is, where's the data coming from? Is it copyrighted? Can I use it for my devices, especially when it's a contract or inserted in a contract versus gaining insight? So something to stew on for a little bit more in the ensuing years, but I'm excited to see it, especially that I have the compliance privacy background to see how we can really lean into it and make this a success for all participants that use Gen AI.
Well, it's clear that technology is playing a vital role in ensuring legalities are on point. Now, let's zoom out a bit for a broader perspective. Looking ahead, Matthew, let's put on our future goggles. Do you see customer success evolving into more of an AI and human function together? And how might this transformation unfold?
Yeah, I think in the context of customer success, I think we're already seeing it. A lot of mid-market to enterprise companies are incorporating AI, whether it's even at the website level. So let's say I want to go to, I'm just saying Workday, for example. You go to a Workday website and already engaging with the chatbot, but these chatbots are getting even more, I would say, intuitive. So maybe a prospect is going to it, that Workday website, just give an example, they notice that that IP has already been, or that computer has already visited them. So maybe they would give insights as to their past visit. Also, it can kind of tee up a salesperson or customer success. You can actually like incorporate that chatbot into a real experience, or you can scale. I think for mid-market enterprise or even the consumer realm is how do you scale with customer success? And so you see it with chatbots, but even like kind of a or one-to-many relationship. So when you're kind of in the queue, how can a customer success person surface the right insights? How can it be for that right client? And really make sure you're inserting the right customer success playbooks at scale. And also, like, how do you kind of log those metrics about customer success? What are their KPIs? And then success metrics. I think it's harder to do historically. I think it's easier to do with Gen AI in customer success, or even at the mid-market enterprise where it's not as much about scale but personalization. So can you kind of surface or glean insight on a kind of a personalization level to that client, understand and drill in a little bit more about their use cases, are there additional use cases, understanding them from a 360 holistic view, so that when you have that talk with the client, you've been fed by the AI as a data point, and then you as a human can really use those data points, as we often do with anything we've read or kind of a point of view, but then listen as much as you can and validate the data that the AI has surfaced or given you kind of a overall holistic view of the client. So I'm really curious to see where it'll go more with customer success, but also sales, having been from there as well. I'm curious about your thoughts about where it could go with customer success and AI.
Well, exciting times ahead, Matthew. And now, before we wrap up, any final thoughts you would like to share?
I would say that, don't be scared of AI for your customer, I would say your audience. AI has been around here for a long time. You look at it back probably the 50s, 60s was really kind of rudimentary AI or machine doing some kind of tasks that were automated. And I think you just have to embrace it and see how it can positively impact your organization or your company or even your personal life versus I would say you have to be a little leery as well. I think we all do. But I think there are the right, politicians in place, policymakers, and then globally we want this to be a positive impact like the internet was and not a negative impact. So I would say in closing, embrace AI where you can, do reading, ask others about their thoughts about AI, always talk to people that are smarter than you, no matter the subject. And I think AI is no matter if I want to learn about AI, I'm going to talk to data engineers. I'm going to talk to people really being, I would say, the mavericks in the space as well, whether it's spearheading the companies or, deploying the technology in their organization. Learn from others, ask as many questions, read as much as you can, and just be cautiously optimistic.
That's a wrap for today's podcast, folks. A big thank you to Matthew for joining us and sharing your expertise.
Okay, thank you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more insightful discussions. Until next time, this is Mansa Kawari signing off.